Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
I hear you. I see you. Um, there was one other, Stephen Hamway, who's like our public information officer. I don't know if he's going to be in the meeting or not. Do you know?
Not to my knowledge. I believe it was just supposed to be you and I.
No, here we are.
All right.
Fire away, ask your questions.
All right. Thank you for taking the time to answer these questions with me.
Okay.
Um, so, first and foremost, can you tell us about yourself and your credentials as a paleontologist as context for the readers?
Okay. I have a PhD in geology. My specialty was paleontology. After I got my PhD, I taught paleontology at the University of New Mexico for about 5 years. Then I was hired to be a curator of paleontology at the New Mexico Museum of Natural History, and I've been here ever since.
Wonderful. Um, Second question. Through your studies, have you worked much with dromaeosaurs or raptors?
Not a lot. I'm not really a dinosaur specialist. I mean, I have published mostly with other people. I wrote a paper with a colleague on a skull or a fragment, a piece of skull of Sauronitholestes. I wrote some papers on the late Cretaceous dinosaur faunas in New Mexico that have some dromaeosaur material, or raptor material. But I haven't done a lot of work on that group of dinosaurs.
Okay. What area would you say is your specialty?
Um, Probably biostratigraphy, which is using the fossils to determine the ages of rocks. That's my specialty.
Okay. Um, so then the next couple of questions, I don't know if you'd be able to answer them as well. What do you know about potential behavioral traits in raptors and specifically dromaeosaurs, pack hunters versus solo, etc.?
Well, I know what's in the literature, and generally, this is an old idea. It's been around for decades. It's thought that a lot of the smaller theropods, the smaller meat-eating dinosaurs, were might have hunted in packs, or at least they did if they hunted larger animals. But a lot of these dromaeosaurs are so small that they were probably eating very small game, things that were the size of lizards or mice, maybe even insects. So that would be something you would do as a solitary hunter. So I think, what you have to say is all of this is speculation. It's really hard to find, good hard evidence about that kind of behavior. And I would think that if you were to really push me, I would say probably most of these smaller theropods were solitary hunters that hunted small game. And because you have to ask yourself the question, why would a group of small predators want to hunt much bigger game? I mean, it happens today. Dogs, wild dogs of various sorts do it. Some of the wild cats do it. But I would think that most of these animals, something like Velociraptor, which isn't a very big animal, it's got a skull about like that big. That animal's probably hunting bugs and lizards and just little animals on its own.
Right. Um, Number four, do you have any evidence or theories as to what they looked like when they're alive? I know that we have some skin samples of some dinosaurs and even like fur or quill patterns left in fossilization, but do you have any ideas to the colors or plumage or eye color or anything like that?
Well, to some large extent, that's all speculation too. For many, many years, like when I grew up, and even until maybe 10 or 20 years ago, we always thought of the dinosaurs as being, having reptilian scales, and they were generally drawn with fairly drab colors, grays, greens, maybe browns, earth tones, whatever. That's all been rethought. And I would say probably most of these small theropods had some sort of feathery or feather like covering. It's not clear that they were fully plumaged like a bird, but there's certainly enough of these animals, particularly in China, in some of the fossil sites in China that have plumage. And people argue, is this really a feather? Is it almost a feather? Whatever. But the point is, I think a lot of these animals were small too, like we were saying. And when you're small, you have a tendency to very easily lose body heat because you have a high surface area to volume. So a lot of small animals, like mammals today and small birds, one of the reasons they have a coating, whether it's hair or feathers, is largely for thermoregulation. So I would guess, based on those concepts, that most of these small theropods had some sort of feathers or feather-like plumage. Color is a little more speculative, a lot more speculative. Most of the artists, they draw them as very colorful, like modern birds. I think that's reasonable, but there's virtually no, hard evidence about color. And then if you say eye color, that I don't know if there's any evidence to support that.
Okay.
But I do think one thing that will happen, and has already happened, is more discoveries will find um, spectacular complete material of some of these animals. And we know from some of the discoveries already, there we see the feather impressions, the plumage, etc.
Okay. That's good information. Um, and we're getting into more spiritual almost questions because that's the other basis of the book that I'm making.
Uh-huh.
After this question, are there any little known findings that you'd like more people to know when it comes to dinosaurs or just prehistoric life in general?
Um,
I know it's a
oh
kind of
yeah, I mean
open
there's
ended question.
yeah. There's a ton of
Oh,
fossils. Oh, look who's here.
Hello!
oh,
We're done.
hi there.
Bye, Stephen. No, we're not done. Um, we just started a minute ago
Oh,
because
this
we
is
didn't
great. I'm
think you
glad you
were
guys
coming.
are on it. I'm the one who's lagging, I guess. Yeah.
Um, to answer your question, I'm think that, we know that most important evolutionary events take place at small body size. So actually, to me, small fossils are more interesting than big fossils because they're the fossils of small animals. And so a lot of what you see in the media and the popular press is all this stuff about big dinosaurs, big elephants, whatever. I think there's a lot of little fossils that deserve more attention, more notoriety. And I guess that's a pretty general answer, but it was a pretty general
It
question.
was a pretty general question.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think what people need to understand is that, big giant dinosaurs, big giant elephants are really fascinating animals. But those animals, those big animals, are usually the end of the story. They're the endpoints of an evolutionary history. If you're interested in the beginning, like the origin of dinosaurs or the origin of elephants, you've got to go back and look at much smaller animals who were the precursors or the ancestors of later big animals, because that's really where the important evolution is occurring.
okay. Also, some good information. Okay, now we get into the more spiritual question. Have you ever considered the potential spiritual significance in dinosaurs? Some spiritual practices include bones and animal remains, deity worship, spirit work, etc. And that's kind of the basis of the book that I'm making. Is some people, like within pagan practices, they will worship the spirit of, say, a fox, and they will do so by communicating with fox bones and things like that. I mean, there's so much world out there. Have you ever heard of anything like that with fossils?
Oh yeah, there's a book you should read it by I think a woman named Adrienne Mayor, Mayor. And she's actually written more than one book about fossils and prehistory. I know I read it, I reviewed an article she wrote some years ago about Confucius, the Chinese philosopher, and dinosaur bones. And I guess they found, like a dinosaur bone in some temple in China that Confucius had written about. And, it goes on and on. I mean, here in New Mexico, there are fossils found at archaeological sites, and those are fossil bones, sometimes fossil shells. The problem is we don't know what people were really doing with those things. What significance did they attach? I mean, to me, I look at the fossils pretty much through a scientific, perspective. So when I see the fossil bone, to me, that's evidence of past life. which is definition of a fossil, you know. But there certainly have been people, and in ancient Greece, again, this comes from Adrian Mayer. They were using fossils in temples and in religious settings. I think the only problem is we don't really fully know what the ancients thought about the fossils. They didn't exactly write down, oh, we think this, and this. But yeah, there's a lot of that that's gone on, and there certainly was a lot of that in the American West.
Okay.
But we don't have a lot of explicit explanations, of this fossil bone is in this building or it's in this temple or whatever. And I may be wrong. Maybe if you go consult her books, there were one or two times where somebody said specifically, oh, this is, the Chinese thought, or some of the Chinese thought these giant bones they called them dragon bones. They were the bones of ancient dragons, so that's what they thought of them. But I'm not sure we know what the Greeks and certainly the Native American peoples, we really don't have much idea about what they were doing with fossils.
More good information. I feel much more enlightened about certain things.
You got to go to Amazon and look. I think Adrienne is spelled Adrienne, Mayer. She's written at least, you got to read her books, or at least one of them.
Okay.
She's written a few books about fossils in their sort of ancient context, both. And I mean, not just, she wrote a book about just the American West, but she also wrote a book about like Europe, the Old World, and things like that.
Okay, I'll definitely have to look into that. Supplemental material, very interesting. Let's see. Oh, if you could talk to a dinosaur and ask them any questions, what would you ask? Specifically about things you can't discern in your field of study.
No, you already covered it. What color were your eyes? What color was your plumage? I'd want the animal to describe to me things that don't fossilize like that. That would probably be one of my primary questions.
All right.
And then, I'd want to know, what did you eat? How did you hunt? All these questions about behavior and appearance that we kind of guess, or some people call it educated guessing or informed speculation. But in the end, we don't have hard data. And so those are the things I'd like to know about.
All right, fair enough. Okay, so we're reaching the end of the questions. There's only 10 questions, super quick, super simple. How would you, the individual, Dr. Lucas, like to be credited in the book? Name, do you have like a website information, anything like that you'd like credited?
No, you could just, what I would say is credit by name, Spencer G. Lucas, and the museum, the Natural History Museum here, because I'm doing this we do this kind of thing, not so much this so often, but we answer questions and we look at things the public bring in. It's a public service than a public museum. This is a public estate museum. So yeah, just credit me by name and then credit the Museum of Natural History.
All right.
Is that okay, Stephen? You think, is that all we need to say?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Sid, if you want to mention that he's a paleontology curator, that could be fine if you need a title in there.
Okay.
But yeah, and if Stephen wasn't here, I'd say give me a cut of your royalties. But he's here, so I can't really.
I won't tell anyone.
Yeah, no, but yeah, I think Spencer G. Lucas, Doctor, if you will, Curator of Paleontology, New Mexico Museum of Natural History and Science, Albuquerque, New Mexico. You have all that. It's all on the museum's website if you need to look it up.
Okay, awesome.
And Sid, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call if you have any questions or need any more info from us.
Will do. Second to last question. I'll be drawing a picture of you to include with your written interview. It could look like you or an imaginary version of you. Do you have any design preferences, Dr. Lucas?
Yeah, make me look younger.
Okay.
No, I don't care. Draw me as I am. Draw whatever you want. But yeah, if you really want, try to make me look younger.
Okay, I can do that.
No, I'm just kidding. No, you do as you wish.
Okay.
You can draw me as you see me, or you can make some representation as you wish.
Okay. And number 10, just to kind of close it all out, any additional thoughts or notes for readers or questions of your own?
I guess the only thing I would tell you is paleontology is a fairly young science. It's really only existed for about 200 years, a little more, as a science. And we know very, very little about the history of life. That's why all the time you turn around, someone's discovering a new dinosaur or a new something, because there's just so much about the history of life that remains to be discovered. And hopefully, people will continue to discover it.
All right. Thank you both so much for all the time and effort and energy that you've put into allowing me this time. And thank you both so much.
Yeah. Thanks for your interest, Sid. If you're curious, I did drop a link in the chat for Adrienne Mayer's CV, which has her book names in there.
All right. I did see
But
that.
Or you
yeah,
can just go, you could just go to Amazon and put her name in under books, and you'll get, I think almost all her books are for sale by Amazon, and they're not very expensive.
Okay. I will. Got that copied. All right. Awesome. Very, very
but yeah,
cool.
thanks
Thank
for
you.
taking the time, and let me know if you need anything else.
Will do.
All
Thank
right,
you both
guys.
so much.
Thanks a
Yeah,
lot.
you as well.
All right,
Bye
bye bye.
bye.